Essentially, there is two sides to who you are. You are source, and then you are who you think you are. And 9/11 would be the simplest, most truthful way of perceiving who you really are. It would be the cleanest grasp of who you are. And the reaching 9/11 is about removing and overcoming any misconception that you might have about who you think you are, and fully realizing who you are. And we have talked about that you essentially can reach for 9/11. You put your intent on 9/11, and then you do the work that appears. But with a poor grasp of 9/11, and with a poor grasp of who you really are, a lot of that work might not make sense to you. You might be presented with situations where you need to be mature and decent and respectful and kind and calm and all sorts of things. But you wouldn't understand why you should be those things. You wouldn't follow through and do the work. So of course, the better you can understand what 9/11 is, and the better you can understand who you really are, the easier it will be for you to fully commit to this work as it appears. And we have talked about how source, how you is the moment, how you are the ultimate happiness and joy, and how you have ultimate clarity, how you are completely neutral, and often who you think you might be is not necessarily all of these things. You might have misconceptions about what true happiness and empowerment is, and therefore not be able to recognize your problems as you go through your day. And essentially what you do when you encounter a problem is that you recognize, first and foremost, what is the situation? What are you thinking? How are you perceiving it? And then you recognize if that is truly how you as a source would choose to think about that thing. If that is the highest frequency way of perceiving that thing. And it could be jealousy or anger or confusion, sadness, anything that isn't of neutrality and happiness. And then you make a decision. You have realized that this is not who I truly am. This is not the most beneficial way to perceive this situation. This is an illusion. And then it's up to you. Are you going to deal with it? Which means remember who you are and see that those problems or issues or misconceptions you had in that situation really doesn't make any sense. And of course they make perfect sense based on who you thought you were. They make perfect sense based on the misconception you had. But it was a misconception. And before you get to 9/11, you will have many of those throughout the day. But are you fully committed to being who you really are? To being free, to being mature and happy and neutral? But why would you be unless you understand that that is the game? To be the highest possible level of who you really are, only within this game. And naturally you have an incredibly strong desire to recognize who you really are and what the truth of the game is. Because that is who you are, your source, who is constantly working towards doing things better, towards growing It's just the essence of what source is. But a low frequency mind with a twisted perception of who they really are have walked far away from that desire, from that core essence of who you are. And it's going to take a real strength to get back to that desire. But if you look around and you reflect on your life, you will see that it is the essence of who you always have been. You have always wanted to learn. You have always wanted to do better. But you didn't necessarily always understand what would be the best thing to work towards. In this low frequency misconception of who you were, you might have thought that the best thing would be to get a lot of money, or to be a gangster even, or to be beautiful. I mean, there are so many ways you could misperceive what this ultimate achievement really was. But now, as you have stopped eating meat, you have intended to recognize what the truth of this game is, who you really are, how things really work. Well, then you have started resonating with that truth. But of course, you might not still be fully out of it. You still might not have an ultimate grasp of who you are, of who you ultimately want to be in this game. And that's really something to intend for. Ultimate clarity about what you are really working towards. I've mentioned so many times on this channel that you want to be neutral, because that is what source is. You want to be happy, because that is what source is. You want to be absolutely in the center, in the essence of this moment, because that is who you are. And the better you can understand these things, the better you can understand who you really are, the easier it will be for you to intend for it, so you can actually have it. And yeah, you might have to recognize a bunch of situations where this isn't necessarily what you had, this isn't what you experienced, but at least now you know who you are and how you should perceive that situation instead. You need to understand that source doesn't judge at all, nothing whatsoever. Each individual source fractal is completely focused on themselves and their performance and doing the best that source fractal could do. No matter what, in any situation, source wants to grow, source wants to do better, source wants more energy. And source don't compare fractal size to other source players. It makes no sense outside of this game. You solely focus on yourself. Source is never jealous of another source fractal that is doing better. They don't judge someone who is doing worse. Source has ultimate clarity. Source simply just is. And anything you might experience within this game that is of jealousy or of anger or whatever it should be that isn't of absolute neutral, centered, present, here and now, happy and calm, is within this game. It is not what you truly want to work towards. I mean, then you would get down to the lowest frequencies. You don't want to be jealous. You want to be happy. You want to be happy when you see success. You want to applaud it.